you start to interpret that information in a different way, and then you suddenly realize, oh, maybe all the things that I thought aren't actually correct, and you allow yourself to take that in. That puts yourself in a very vulnerable space. But if you're okay with it and you allow yourself to be okay with it, you just got 10 times smarter.
Oh,
because
yes.
You dropped the walls,
yes.
right? Those walls were blocking you from gaining information
yes.
that could help you through life.
I'm clapping. That was really well put.
Welcome back to the show. There's no telling where we'll go. So come and share a laugh on the Imp and Skizz podcast.
We're talking about the art of conversation today, which is, how can that be a podcast, right? And I think that a lot of people take the concept of conversation to be just so like, well, it's a word, it's two people talking. But I think when you dive into what it actually is and all the different, there's pitfalls in conversation, there's misinterpretations, there's stuff like that. There's proper ways to move forward and all that. But when it comes down to, let's just start with a baseline definition. What is conversation? You want to start or you want me to start?
I'll start because I'm sure you're going to have a much better definition.
No, I don't know, man.
I mean, if you look at it, surface level conversation is, as individuals, we all have our own ideas, our own thoughts, and we just want to convey those in a way, whether it's verbal or whether it's through some other kind of medium that we can actually get our thoughts out, right? And we want to have somebody listen to that and interpret it and understand us, and then at the same time be willing to grow our understanding, and that's where conversation is the two-way street, right? If you're willing to engage in a conversation, that means not only are you delivering your thoughts, but you're wanting the person to interpret that and then also give their thoughts on what they thought about what you just said or delivered in the communication. So to me, that's what it is. It's just wanting to be understood, I think.
I can dig it. I can dig that. And I think that my definition is very similar. I've always seen conversation as the ability to build a conduit from one mind to another, right?
Yeah.
I think X about something. Now I don't necessarily need you to think X about this. I need you to understand that I do, or this is how I feel about it. And at the same time, I think conversation is a two-way thing. So I also want to know, what are your thoughts about this? But the premise being that since try to think about life before conversation. And then when I mean before, I mean, like that. Can you imagine? And I've talked about this before where imagine being like literally no words. We're talking about no words have been created yet. There's just grunts and stuff. And you can only express whether you like something or you dislike something. And chances are the dislike was a lot clearer, right? There's probably yelling and hitting and stuff like that. And, you fast forward, obviously a very, very long time, and you get yourself into a space to where words have made their way into the mix to convey certain types of emotions and feelings that we're not even mastering today. You think of somebody who, by the way, I'm not bilingual, but I'll tell you right now, why do I covet that skill?
Yeah.
People bilingual, trilingual, that stuff is so impressive to me. And those people who do that, you see them often say, well, this language doesn't actually have a translation for that. And I've always found that very interesting. Yeah. You explain what that word, or they know what it is because they speak both languages, but like, well, this language doesn't actually have an interpretation, but we would probably try to sort of maybe say it like this. And when you hear moments like that, you realize we're still developing words. We're still trying to find ways to properly communicate and converse with one another, right? But in doing so, we have to be at peace with the fact that there's going to be some pitfalls. There's going to be some moments where we converse very poorly. And that's why I like this topic, because I love conversation, really good conversation. And the art of conversation, I think I can genuinely help a lot, like guide a lot of people in regards to, this is how you should approach what it is to listen. This is how you should approach what it is to speak. Tell me what is it you would like people to walk away with on this one?
I think well, first of all, what comes to mind is the fact that people are maybe listening to this podcast right now. It's all about communication, right? They're tuning in to you and I having communication for, this entire podcast. It's our back and forth. It's our getting out our thoughts to each other and bouncing back and forth and kind of like, understanding each other and where we're coming from and getting that out and just letting people kind of listen in on our conversation. So, but as far as what I think I would really like people to walk away with today is communication's tough, right? Doing it properly, and no one's perfect at it. Like you said, some languages don't even have all the right words yet developed. And what are some things people can do to better converse and better understand each other and get along better? Because I think the world needs that right now.
Yep.
The ability to have a conversation with somebody, especially in the realm where you may not agree.
Yes.
And realize that you can communicate, you can have your thoughts, another person can have their thoughts. They don't have to be aligned to still get along and understand each other. And so if we can get into some of that, I'd love to do that
That's
today.
That's great. What a great one, man. Because like I said, I was hoping to, because some people they struggle a little bit with conversation, right? And that's okay. Some people have a little bit of anxiety when they're speaking to strangers, or maybe not even strangers, right? Yeah. You've seen people cannot interview. Some people can't do it, and some people can interview really well. And that's what I'm kind of hoping to do here, is give people kind of a skill set on what it is, on what the art of conversation is. But I think what you just hit on there is huge, is that there's kind of a bigger picture here, is that we do find ourselves, I would say, there's a lot of division in the world right now. I think that most people would agree with that. And I also would venture that division has always been there. And that's an unfortunate fact of the matter. And I think that the inability for us to not necessarily see eye to eye, but properly have a conversation is because the intention of conversation has gone askew. And what I mean by that is, I've talked about this before in other avenues, but unless you're a lawyer or you're on the debate team, stop conversing to win. Stop doing it, right? And I'm willing to bet many people just said amen, because they're aware of people that do that, right? Yeah. And also keep in mind, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you might be that person. And what I mean by this is, like I said, there is a time and place for debate. It's in a courtroom, or it's going to be you're actually on a debate team. But if you're actually having a conversation, and it's okay to want to prove your side. I mean, I can dig that. But if the intention of the conversation it suddenly becomes winning the conversation, I don't think you're doing it right, because what you're going to end up doing is shutting yourself off to a very real opportunity to learn something, right? So I'm really confident we're not going to talk about, politics in this podcast. That's not really my gig, and I don't presume to be an authority on that at all. I say that a lot, and especially with politics. I'm not, in the realm there. But I have a good friend of mine, and from a political standpoint, we're very different. We're very different, but it's never us trying to beat the other person. It actually is a really good moment where we just have conversation as to, I think that approach has its detriment, and here's why. And when I do that, he listens. And when he gives his, I'll be honest with you, man, he's, from a political standpoint, we're not eye to eye, but he's given some points where I'm like, I don't see it working out that way, but it makes perfect sense why you would think it. And you might, and I say this, I'm like, and you might be right. I might be wrong here. So what ends up happening is, in that moment, we're both exercising a great degree of humility, because we're both not trying to beat the other person. We're both just trying to learn from the other person. And at the same time, maybe we can impart a little knowledge of our own into them, as a set of optics that they have never exercised before. And so we find ourselves in this playground of just talking and just being human, because we both drop that baggage of trying to beat the other person.
Yeah. I mean, there's extreme power in being open-minded when you converse with somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because if you think about it, you've had your perspective shaped in one way or another by all sorts of different things in life, the information that you've been fed or gathered on your own, your upbringing, whatever, culture. There's lots of things that go into shaping somebody's perspective in all their thoughts, right? And so when you're conversing with somebody, there's bound to be they're not going to have the same thoughts as you most of the time. More often than not, they're not going to. Even you and I, who have been best friends for over 20 years, disagree on a lot of stuff. Right? And you would think, we should have similar perspectives, because we've both worked the same jobs together. We've content creators, went to high school together, all this stuff. No, we've had so many different things in our life shape our perspectives differently, and information that we've each individually sought out and gathered, that when we come together, we have different perspectives. And the idea is that if you can open your mind and then allow yourself to understand what shaped that person's perspective, then you gain a new perspective.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you all of a sudden things start to click, right? It's trying to allow yourself to understand that people will interpret things differently and then understand why, right? And that why is very, very important too, because if you can really get on that level with somebody, you can make a deeper connection where who cares who won, because you both did.
Yeah.
You both just learned something, even if it's just about each other and not about some piece of information that somebody gathered on their own.
Yeah.
You know, but it's too often now, and like you said, like the world needs more of this. Too often now, people put up their barriers to where it's just like, I have formed this opinion on XYZ, and if the person I'm talking to does not agree with me, I will fight them to death until they agree. And that is definitely not the way to go, because chances are neither one of you are going to be right with whatever you're debating about or conversing about in this case, because we don't know everything.
No.
Right? We are humans. We are not flawless, even though I like to poke fun at that. We all have our flaws, and we're all going to misinterpret or get misinformed or somehow have our perspectives shaped differently to where we're not going to have the full picture, I think, ever.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we need to be open to understanding that. Like, you're never going to know if you're right. Yeah. You know, so you need to allow yourself to understand, I might not be.
Yes, dude.
So don't fight to the core.
That's right. Yeah.
know?
And there's so much tranquility in this phrase, I don't know. And that's the other thing, is that for some reason along the way, people have become very, very fearful of not understanding or not knowing something or not being the expert in the room or being called out for not being the expert or being called out for not even being on the same page as everybody. There's so much freedom in saying, I don't know. And on top of that, there's so much danger in not admitting when you don't know something. Right. And
you used to get on me like crazy because I was in that space. And maybe I still fall into those times where I do forget that it's okay to say I don't know. But you were really good at calling me out when I was bad about this. Like, I really always wanted to be right about everything, and I wanted to have the information. And I would say, you know, I would just BS my way to an answer, and then you would find out that I had just fed you BS, and you call me out. You're like, why did you tell me this if you didn't know for sure? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I had to give you some kind of answer, and you were like, just say I don't know.
Yes, I know.
Like, that's so much less destructive than you giving me wrong information.
Yes, so much less destructive, because so many things happen in that moment, right? And for the record, there is such a thing as being very confident that, I really, really thought I was right about this. You know what I mean? And that stuff's going to happen. But those moments where people are around 70% sure, but they strut like they're at 100% and they are the authority, those are the moments I'm talking about, right? And you're right, because you couldn't handle the idea of not being my go-to guy. You gave me some BS answer and I went with it, and I spun my wheels, and whatever happened. And then I came back and this whole conversation took place. But the problem is that it's twofold. I wasted my time and you lost credibility. Yeah. Like that's not good. When in reality, if you had said, actually, I don't know, then not only would I have not have wasted my time, but my respect would have found a way to even go up. You know what I mean? Like, even higher. And that's the thing. And there was we won't say names, but there was a guy we used to work with. We called him the tap dancer. Oh, okay. And so you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. This guy's, he turned the whole false authority into an art. He was a BS Bob Ross, right? This guy was, Bob Ross is a very famous painter, if you know what I'm talking about. This guy was an absolute artist of what it was to fool people, and which I found weird, because I have a really good radar for that. I didn't with you because I'd never had to worry about it before. That was a shocking one to me, right? But this guy wasn't, I mean, he turned into an art, but somehow everybody still knew, right? Yeah. And there was a time where I asked him a question on something that he should have, I shouldn't say should have had the answer for, but his particular role, that's who you would ask. And he did his dancing. And I asked him the same question, because like, he did not answer my question. And he did more dancing. He changed his words around. And I asked the same question. I asked the same question, same words, same inflection. And he knew what I was doing. And he finally went, I don't know. And I said, that's all you had to say, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I said, that's totally fine. If I happen to find the answer, I'll share it with you. If you come across it, let me know. That's all you had to say. Yeah. And it was one of those things where I was like, do you see how we're fine and you're fine? Like, it's okay. It's so dangerous to presume that you just have the answer, because it really is. It ties back to that original pitfall of winning, of being right, like making it about being right or whatever, when in reality, conversation should legitimately be about getting my thoughts and feelings into your mind. It doesn't mean that you have to consume them or adopt them. It does mean that you know what I'm trying to say, you know, and I want to do the same. I want to do the same with, and when people do that, you'll realize the conversations themselves become very, very rich at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's very powerful to have these conversations when you really don't agree, and you can just gain understanding. Like you get to that point to where like, I can't believe you think that, I need to change your mind. And you go from that to understanding, oh, actually, I see why you think that.
Mhm.
I still don't agree with it,
Yeah.
but I can see how you got there. Like you were saying with you and your buddy as far as politics go.
Yeah.
And that's powerful in itself, because then now you understand that we're all human, right?
Yeah.
And we can just allow ourselves to make connections, understand each other, and understand it's okay to have differences.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big thing, I think, right now, especially in social media, because we talk about how conversation changes. When you and I are in person, we have so much more that we can bounce off of. I can tell by your face, you moving, and your eye contact, and all that stuff, inflection, all that stuff is present when you're in person. But nowadays, more conversation, I'm doing air quotes, happens online in text form, social media. And so there's none of that. There's none of that inflection, no facial movements happening that are going to give you an indication, oh, that person, you know, they've actually have a new like language. My daughter was just informing me this, because I was like, somebody did a /SRS on a tweet that they sent me. What does that mean? And she's like, oh, there's this whole emotion language now that people are tacking on to their messages. And so /SRS means seriously. Yeah. Like, I'm serious. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now, not only like because the words themselves aren't going to give you the context, like the emotion behind it. Now we actually have to tag it. Yeah. Right. So now but that's learning, right? This is new. And now I have to go learn this new alphabet soup thing of what everything means, you know? And so, you know, I had to wiki it, and I'm like, oh, there's so many things here, you know, and now I got to memorize, but you lose all that. And so I think what happens when you lose that ability to like properly communicate, and you're doing it on social media, guess what happens? Fighting breaks out, right? And all of a sudden it's this storm of negativity and people going at each other. And what's really happening is everybody's got their opinion, and they're not allowing somebody else's opinion. Right.
Well, those moments tend to, in my opinion, those moments tend to attract the type of people whose objective in conversation is to win. That's all they want to do, right? And that's why it gets so nasty so fast, because to win, a battle has to ensue. And so all it is a bunch of people that subscribe to, I just want to win. And so think of a big boxing ring with 50 people in it, and they all went in there to punch somebody. It's going to be a complete madness, and you're not going to get anywhere. Like that's what I'm talking about, right? It just sinks in. And you bring up a really interesting point, you know, with text and with the emotes is, and texting is not conversation, right? We know this. Like you said it perfectly. There's no inflection in texting. You can definitely interpret it the wrong way. It doesn't mean that you can't convey simple surface level points or whatever. But have you ever noticed if text is your only option, for whatever reason, you can't talk to the person, text is the only option, and you want to convey something seriously, what ends up happening is you end up leaving them a 500-word essay. Yeah. Right? Because you're like, I really want this to come out properly. And you realize you're not there to touch their shoulder. You're not there to have inflection or pause. You can't really dictate a cadence in text. And so now and you type this, and then I think maybe this, and by this I'm not saying this. You know what I mean? And you end up going,
you asterisk every sentence you do.
You end up doing that. And so I think that's where like you said, the emotes came into play, because we realized along the journey of, okay, now we have this technology where I can send you a text message like this, but I'm not really getting my feelings across. Let's get a smiley face or something. I'm really happy about what you just said or what I said. Oh, you know, we're going to need some crying. And now even the emotes are losing their way, right? And by that is, there's people out there who think that, you know, like somebody gets bad news and they send back a crying emote. It's like, no, that emote's actually crying with laughter. You know what I mean? So it's like you're using that wrong. Or my understanding is there's one that's like, it really looks like the prayer position with the, your fingertips together and like you're praying. And so but I saw a thing, I don't know how true it is, but it really does look like it's true, is that people are using like something horrible happened to somebody and okay, I'm praying for you. But you look, it's actually two people high-fiving. So it's
really?
like, and here's the deal. I actually don't know if it is, but if you look again, I think it is. I think it's actually two people.
I think, well,
I don't know.
The one I use, I'm pretty sure if you hover over it or whatever, it says praying, but
maybe it does.
I use that all the time, not to say pray for something.
Right.
I use it as like, thank you. You know what I mean?
Course.
Like I do this all the time. Like, oh, thank you for whatever, like, and I show appreciation.
Yeah.
And
with the emote?
the two hands together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll have to look into that. So
I have an actual problem when it comes to emotes though. Like I can't type a sentence on Twitter or whatever that doesn't end in an emote. Like I have an actual addiction.
And nine times out of 10, it's the wink emote. That's your go-to.
Yeah, exactly, my go-to. But yeah, so I've noticed that. I'm like, I got to stop sending emotes for every single message I send.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
But, and I really lean into the whole winning the argument thing and dropping that baggage, because if you want to look at winning and losing as in I'm right, you're wrong, fine, you do you or whatever, but you're going to realize on how much that's going to stifle proper conversation. But maybe go in with this set here is that look for opportunities during a conversation to genuinely identify with the other person or the other people. Conversation could be between more than two people. Look for an opportunity to genuinely identify with them and genuinely see where they're coming from. Not textbook, not do it to check a box like, well, I can see where you're coming from. Really try to get in there, put your feet in their shoes and understand their background to the best of your ability. Understand what they're thinking of the situation. Understand what they're hearing from you versus what you think you're sending, right? And like take all those moments and you'll realize a lot of those, the conversation has this tendency to crystallize. And as soon as you give up and surrender all the baggage. And what's more is if you end up being wrong, let's just say they actually did get to a point to where whatever point they're trying to make, they better illustrated it or whatever you want to call it. Those are great moments. Those I love like the feeling of being most people don't like it.
Most people don't like that.
Yeah.
Like because like it puts you in that vulnerable spot of having to admit, even if only to yourself, that you were capable of being wrong.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people associate that with being a failure.
Yeah.
Right. And
drop it.
Yeah. If you're able to drop that, like that can be so enlightening.
Yes.
I mean, imagine going into a conversation where you're 100% convinced what you're about to say is right. And you know that person doesn't think that way. And you're, by the end of the conversation, you're going to convince them. That's that battle, right, ensues. And then suddenly along the way, you open your mind a little bit. You hear what they're saying, because conversation is not just speaking, right? It's also listening. Absolutely. And that's the part that most people fail at, I'll myself included. So you actually open your mind, you listen, and then you start to interpret that information in a different way. And then you suddenly realize, oh, maybe all the things that I thought aren't actually correct. And you allow yourself to take that in. That puts yourself in a very vulnerable space. But if you're okay with it and you allow yourself to be okay with it, you just got 10 times smarter.
Oh,
because
yes.
You dropped the walls,
yes.
right? Those walls were blocking you from gaining information that could help you through life.
I'm clapping. That was really well put. Those walls are blocking you from gaining information. Yeah. Those walls, the walls are meant to keep something out. And sometimes the thing you're keeping out is beneficial. You're right. You put those walls up, it closes you up. And that's why we see the divide that we see, because people lock themselves into their own ideologies. They set their feet in cement, and this is where I'm at. You can't touch me. You can't budge me. It's like, okay, that's a very lonely place. First of all, just pump the brakes for a second. All your thoughts and all your beliefs, you might be right. You might, but I'm saying might. And I'm also going to say you're probably not, because if you are this closed off, then your palate that you've exposed yourself to is very limited. As well. Yeah. And the chances are the only people you will associate yourself with are people who think exactly like you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So bravo. Yeah. Keep clapping each other on the back over and over again and pounding your fists in agreement.
Enjoy your tunnel.
Yeah. You're not exactly. Yeah. Enjoy that. That's a lonely place. And when I'm wrong about stuff, it's like I said, I enjoy those moments. Of course there's a degree of humility there, but in those moments I'm like, Like, one of those moments, somebody will make a point that is just very, very good. And I'll always look up in the air and I'll go, oh, hold on. And sometimes I'll put my hand up to him. I'll say, hold on, let me process that. And it just starts to make more sense to me. And the next thing I know, I have this whole new, like book of wisdom that I got from this person because I shut up for a second and just listened to what they had to say.
Yeah.
And it was just this great moment. And now I get to take that and it's more in my toolbox. It's not I didn't come out of the womb being able to talk very well. This has been a long journey of just showing humility, shutting up, listen. When you're going to speak, stop for a second. Let me think about how this is going to come across. And then, okay, well, here's how I think. And being sensitive, right? Understanding the timing. We joked a little bit about this in regards to timing is everything too. Understand who's in front of you, understand their background, and understand who's in front of you right now. Because who's in front of you right now might not be the same person if it was yesterday or if it's a week from now, right? And so now, and what I mean by that is, let's say, like, somebody's cat dies, right? Well, that's something you typically share with your friends. You would say, well, my cat just died, and you're sad. But if the company in front of you is somebody who just lost their grandmother, maybe don't talk about your cat right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's it's one of those things where
reading the room.
Read the room, right? Yeah, exactly. My point being that whoever you're talking to, whether it's a person or it's people or whatever, everything, the dynamics is a moving target, and it's not meant to put you in a place to where you're walking on eggshells. It is meant to put you in a place to where we're always looking for opportunities to exercise compassion.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you become very understanding. It slows the conversation down to not slows the progression of it down, but slows it down and backs it up to a level to where you're both there for the same reason. And those are my most enlightening moments, is when I get to speak to somebody whom I can genuinely identify with, not necessarily believe everything they believe, but I can identify with, and I get to get this whole fresh perspective of life because I'm seeing it through their eyes.
Yeah. In conversation, there's a good point you made, and I think with the story of the grandparent dying versus the cat dying, it's empathy, right?
Yeah.
To understand how to be empathetic towards people and understand, we had that story about the day you were in my cube and you didn't realize I was in a bad mood and you were messing with me, right?
Boy.
It's understanding, reading the room, understanding the mood somebody's in, right? Because if you try to get into conversation with somebody that's in a terrible mood, chances are if you're trying to get them to agree with you on something, they're going to be closed off.
Yeah.
Because they're already in a defense mechanism because they're in a bad mood or whatever, right? So you need to understand timing of these conversations, especially the difficult ones. You need to understand that. You need to be empathetic. I see so many times where people are more into the technical part of the conversation. I need to convey points X, Y, Z, and they really don't care how the person that they're going to give these points to is going to receive it. They just have to give it. They just have to give it to them, and they don't state it in a way, right, where they're being empathetic. And let's say you have to deliver a hard message to somebody, right? And you don't just approach somebody and be like, look, what you're doing is terrible, right? Because that's what's that going to do to that person? They're immediately going to put themselves in a defense mechanism.
Right.
Like you're attacking me.
Yeah.
I'm going to attack back or I'm going to flee. Right?
Yep.
It's fight or flight. Right. So to include empathy in our conversations, I think is super important. And that's just humanizing, right? We need to remember we're all humans. We have emotions, and it's okay to understand that when you're having conversations. It's important to understand that. I see far too many times where people just don't seem to care that somebody's going through something, and just like you said, it's just, it comes off as unempathetic. And
the timing, and that was a good way to put that too. And the timing is huge in that as well. And that person, if you had to deliver, if you're saying, you're doing a terrible job at this, it might be, you're actually right. I mean, that is right. But there's a huge difference. And I've said, me, I always say this, being right and doing the right thing have nothing to do with each other. Nothing. And I'm not suggesting that you lie to that person, but there is a right way to approach that. Okay. They may have not delivered what they needed to deliver. And you might be saying, you blew it. You didn't deliver this. But there's a very good chance that really wasn't the right thing at that moment. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, or at least if you do feel like you have to deliver that news, try to try to soften it. You don't sugarcoat it, but
Right.
at least show like, look, I know this might be hard for you to hear, but
Yeah.
I need to deliver this message. I know there's how you frame that. Anything you say with a but, you can always.
I disagree
What's
with
coming
that.
next is going to be bad, but
Yeah.
but there are certain ways to do it to where you can get a point across without. You can still get that point across that they're not going to want to hear it.
Yeah.
But then still be empathetic and be like show that you care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if somebody's gonna tell me I suck at something, if they tell me in a way where I can see they're telling me I suck, not because they want to get me upset about it, because they actually care about me and they want me to do better,
Yeah.
then I can handle that much better than them just saying, dude, you suck. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. And that kind of leads into another good topic in regards to conversation is the ability to offer and receive criticism, right? There's a right and wrong way to do that, I believe. And for example, let's start with receiving criticism, right? If you're asking for feedback, ask for feedback correctly. And if you're asking for feedback and there's only one answer you want, you're not ready for feedback. Right. And you see this has been poked fun at inside TV shows and stuff like that. But if I make a video and I'm iffy about, okay, for example, I did a little piece in one of my old videos around the history of how what LA actually is, right, in Minecraft.
I remember that.
And I sent it to you. If I sent it to you because all they wanted was for you to come back and be like, dude, it was awesome. Well, I shouldn't send it to you. Right. But if I send it to you and I send it with, what do you think? If I send it with, what do you think? Well, I better be ready for anything. I better be okay with the fact that you might not like it. And I'm going to want to know why you don't like it, but I'm sending it to you because you do this art as well. I'm curious, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'm asking for your feedback. But if I'm sending it just so that you can come and just bloat my head and say, oh, great job, and that's my only intent, that's not the right way to ask for feedback. And all that does is end up causing problems. And you see it. You ever had somebody who asked for their feedback? You give it to them, and then they argue with you. It's like, what? Are you arguing that that's not my feedback? That's my feedback.
I got a good story about this. Our good friend V00,
Mm-hmm.
right? One of the nicest people on the planet.
Yeah, he's awesome.
To a fault. Okay. He does not like to give constructive criticism, I guess we'll call it, or anything that could be considered criticism. So, but I value his opinion on things, and so do my peers. So Tango, our buddy Tango, has realized if you're going to ask for feedback from B00, don't just say, hey, I designed this, what do you think of my bass? And because B00 is a nice guy, he's going to be like, dude, you crushed it. That's amazing.
Oh.
Right? So instead, anytime Tango asks B00 for advice on something, he starts off with permission to be mean. And that opens the floor, right? So B00, I'm giving you permission to be mean to me.
Yeah.
Give me that constructive criticism, or even criticism, who cares? I want your honest opinion. I'm allowing you to say mean things if you have to, because I want that. I want to get better, and I want you to tell me what part of this sucks. You know what I mean? Because if you just come back and say, dude, that looks awesome, doesn't help me out.
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at an expert like him for things like Minecraft builds. He's one of the masters out there. So, but he's such a nice guy. He doesn't like to say negative things.
Yeah.
So you have to tell him, please be negative on this. I'm looking for ways to improve it.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that
there's
amazing?
always that example too.
That's interesting that you say that. So one of my roles at work is I'm a relatively accomplished writer, right? I'm not an author, but my ability to put words together on paper, especially with a little bit of thought, I feel confident in my ability to persuade and to convey a message. And for that reason, I've become known as that guy, right? When it comes to writing big papers, writing abstracts, people write theirs, they come to me for feedback. And when they do that, I always tell them, listen, I'm going to give you a lot of feedback on. I'm going to read through this. I'm going to tell you what I think you should do. I'm going to likely tell you how to reconstruct certain things and approach. Sometimes I'm going to restructure your entire paper. And essentially what you get back is going to be a lot of red. There's going to be more red letters than there were original letters you gave me. Does not mean that I'm right. I tell them that all the time. I say, you don't have to take any of my advice. And if you take none of it, that's okay. This is just what I think you should do.
Yeah.
Well, there's one dude who comes to me, and he is really good. to the point to where if I ever write another one, I'm going to have him look at it, right? He comes to me, he's like, dude, I know you're the best at this. Can you read through this? I go through his paper. There's like 2 red marks. Like you forgot a period here. Like not real stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I also tell him, I say, listen, I need you to understand, I actually did scrutinize this. I scrutinized this. I don't need to put red for the sake of putting red.
Yeah.
This paper's beautifully written. I have nothing to add to it. And I'm very, I'm almost saying maybe take it to somebody else. You know what I mean? Because I have nothing to add to this. You're very good. And he appreciated it. He did his thing. Several years go by and he does it again, right? There's another paper and he sends it to me. And as I'm going through this, I'm like, God, this is just so beautiful. I've forgotten that it was the same guy because I do this for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? I wonder. And I go through my archives. I dig up his old paper from 3 years and I'm like, it's the same guy. It's the same guy. Like this is like this. He just writes so well, you know, but a lot of that's on the receiving, but there's something interesting about, I don't know how to put it, but when I have friends and I love them, I only want the best for them. And when I was younger, I didn't wait for permission to give my feedback.
Advice,
I was going to give it to you. Right. And this is when I was younger and I was just, this is what you need to be doing. And most of the time I was probably right, but it doesn't matter that you're right. It doesn't matter. Sometimes people aren't ready to hear that. And just the fact that you're right means nothing. And it was my wife, was my girlfriend at the time. It's my wife who was like, you know, sometimes people just want you to listen to them. They don't need you to fix their problems. And I'm like, and what did I do? I argued with her. Of course I did. You know, I was young. I mean, she was very wise, you know, and we were still, I must have been, I don't know, 20, I guess. And she said, you know, people they just want you to listen. And I said, no, I understand that. I said, but I love these people and I want what's best for them. She said, I understand that. And she goes, but they're not always ready to hear it. Sometimes people just want you to listen. And I let that sink in and I was like, you know what? She actually has a good point. So I developed this new approach to where when people were doing things that I was like, this is so bad for you, I would typically say, can I offer something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you ask for permission.
Yes, I do.
Advice,
I ask, can I offer something? And sometimes every once in a while they're like, no. You know, and I'm like, okay, and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I'm like, I'm just here to listen. And sometimes I can't actually tell a difference if they want. And so even with my own wife, there'll be times where she's telling me about her day and I'll be like, do you want me to just listen or do you want some feedback? And now we're at the point where 9 times out of 10, she's like, no, I need you to tell me what to do here. You know what I mean? But other times she's like, no, I'm just venting. I'm like, hey, how about it? You know? But when you ask permission to offer feedback, you're showing a humility there. You're not broadcasting, well, I know better than you.
Right.
So boy, are you lucky you bumped into me. Yeah.
I think, so we're, you know, the art of communication is the subject right now, but it could easily be the art of listening.
Yeah.
Right. Because listening, I think, is the bigger part of conversation. And I'll be honest here, like listening is not something I'm great at, you know, like a lot of times, and I'm sure I'm not alone. That's the only reason I'm going to bring this up. But a lot of times when you're having a back and forth with somebody, sometimes I will kind of tune out a little bit and start thinking before they're even done, how am I going to respond? Right. And I'm no longer listening. I'm just trying to build my next case or whatever.
Yeah. And
right.
Yes. And you're thinking not how am I going to respond? How am I going to rebuttal?
Right. And so that's a common pitfall that I fall into when it comes to conversations because like we just said, if you're not fully listening, you're not going to get the whole point. You're not being open-minded and you're already trying to structure how to win. So anytime I start to kind of like zone out, somebody's still talking to me, I start to zone out and I start to think, what am I going to say next? Mm-hmm. You know, and obviously with us doing a podcast, we sit here and we converse back and forth for, you know, an hour almost each podcast. I find myself still doing that, even though you and I have built such a rapport of being able to go back and forth. And I think we've seen a lot of great comments about how people do really appreciate that we kind of allow each other to breathe and give our thoughts and stuff. And our back and forth, we've danced, you know what I mean? Yeah. Conversation can be a dance and we've learned how to dance a little bit. And I think that comes across in the podcast. At least people have said so, which I appreciate. But even then, I still find myself getting sucked into situations where before you're even done, I'm thinking, oh, darn, what am I going to, I better think of I'm going to say next or else we're going to have dead air or whatever, you know? And so it's not easy. Like listening the listening part of conversation is not easy. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes open-mindedness. It takes being humble, being vulnerable. Like there's a lot to it that you have to just get comfortable with to be a good listener.
Yeah. You're and when you perfect that piece of it is when the world just opens up to, there's a team, I lead a lot of teams at work right now. Right. And we had to create something. I'm just going to say that we had to create a certain feature of something. And I put a pitch out there, and I'm the leader of this team. So what they thought was, okay, well, he's pitching this. This is what we're going to do. And I started to pick up on that because I pitched it and they're like, this is good. But there was a lot of quiet. And I said, some of you have a better idea. I want to hear it. And I said, guys, I'm pitching this. This is to get the conversation going. And they said, well, this seems good. But one of the key developers, she's very shy, but so talented. I called her out specifically because I know what this girl's made of. And she pitched her idea so much better. And she pitched on how to move forward. And I must have processed it for 2 seconds. I said, yeah, that's better. That's objectively better. If nobody else has something, that's what we're doing. And it was that fast. And so what they saw was the air quotes leader of the team say, this is how I think we should do it. Their expertise and their history led them to believe that I was saying, this is how we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And I pulled and said, let's go. You guys have something better. You have to have something better. And I got something better. Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, you and I have had managers in the past who being wrong, not on the table.
Right.
And it is.
Yeah. It was almost like their way of setting their authority.
Yes.
Right.
It's just to be right all the time.
Yeah,
it's like, no, that just makes you feel, you look so, unconfident, but it's more than that. What's it when you're like really unconfident? What is it?
The word's escaping me now.
Yeah,
right now too.
Yeah, it's a word.
That's what happens when we talk for an hour straight.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's gonna bug me now. And that's okay. It's called comment seeding in the content creation world.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you tell us what word you think we're thinking.
You guys are helping the algorithm.
Dang it!
By giving us the word. So we'll learn it in a week's time. But it'll come to you as I'm.
Yeah.
Except I lost my.
But I'm listening. I'm gonna. Oh yeah. See, now I derailed you.
Yeah. Because now I can only think about the fact that I don't know that word.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Insecure. Yeah, there it is.
You gave everybody just enough time to leave that comment and hit. All right. Thanks for the algorithm seeding. We appreciate that. Yeah, they're very insecure.
Gosh darn it.
Right. Oh yeah. So it's that idea that. So you're saying like, okay, you have a manager or whatever that's my way or the highway. I'm the only one that can be right. I'm not going to listen to my team. And if you think about it, what that means is, okay, say you had a team of 10 people, right? And you're the manager. That's 10 other brains, 10 other perspectives that could be working to with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Not against you.
No.
Because that's the thing. It's like back to, it's not a fight.
No.
They're working with you, especially if you're a team at work. And why not leverage that? Because you're insecure and you're unwilling to drop your walls and all that. Like, this is something I've realized as a content creator too, because now I'm streaming to thousands of people, and I realized, you know what? I might struggle to come up with an idea for what I want to do with my content, like what I want to do for my next episode of Hermitcraft or whatever. But if I go stream to 3,000 people and I say, hey guys, what do you think? And I just take a minute to read chat and like really listen and really think about some of their ideas. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Next thing you know, I have a slew of amazing ideas because I've allowed myself to be humble, vulnerable, admit I'm stuck. I need help. I have a creative block happening, right? And you guys can help me. You can work with me, and they love it.
Yeah,
they
that's
love
good.
the ability. And now I got all this brain trust to help me out. And all I did was be willing to listen.
Yeah.
Be willing to put myself out there and say, I don't know something. I need your help, right?
Yeah.
And allow them to help.
Yeah.
You know?
And I've done that. And I always say the same thing when I'm doing a video, and I'll say like, leave your suggestions in the comment. I might take them. I might not. You know what I mean? It's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's like, just do it.
That's the other thing too, is like, because I'm a people pleaser, when people say something and I don't agree, I'm just like, Yeah, I'm skipping past that one. I don't want people to feel bad because, there is that saying, like, there's no such thing as a bad idea, right? And that's what people do, and that's great, just like be willing to just throw your initial thoughts out,
Yeah.
but also be prepared to accept that it might not be good.
Yeah, yeah. There is such a thing as a bad idea. The problem is the sentence needs to go, there is such a thing as a bad idea, and that's okay. I want to hear
That's better.
I want to hear him anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same ring, but that's better.
Yeah. If you give an idea and we're able to debunk that like within seconds and it's so obvious on why it wasn't going to work, that's okay. We'll all move on and you'll move on too.
Yeah, I think the kind of connotation behind there's no such thing as bad ideas, the fact that at least if you try to speak up or whatever, like you said when you threw it out to your team, this is my idea, and then they weren't speaking. Yeah. Right. Even if somebody spoke up and had a bad idea right away, at least that got the wheels turning, the ball rolling. Yeah. Right. And that's the idea, is like, you're not just going to go with the bad idea, but at least then you've started the conversation. Yeah. You've opened the doors. There you go. Right. That's so good. I think that's kind of the connotation behind it. That makes sense. But I think you hit on something big. It's the art of conversation, but it really is almost the art of listening. And I think listening is so much, it's such a big portion of what proper conversation is. Yeah. And I think, and I actually am going to issue a little challenge here. I hope that's okay. Three-step challenge? Yeah, no, this is just going to be just a small challenge, is to, I think everybody, and myself included, can learn from this, is that the next time you find yourself into what can classically be categorized as a debate, if you will, and you found yourself in a space where you're having an argument with somebody, do your thing, but hold on for a second and push yourself to see, how deeply can I identify with this person? Mm-hmm. They have a point, and I just cannot see on how they can see how they could believe this. Yeah. I'm going to try. I'm going to try to see how they see it like this. And I think what's going to end up happening is you might be able to pull it off, but you might not. And if you don't, that's okay too. What's important is that you tried. But I'm willing to bet what's going to end up coming out of the other side of that coin is you're going to get a whole fresh perspective that you might not agree with, but it's going to invite a whole lot more data into your mind in regards to how you now process things. Mm-hmm. You're going to realize, and what's going to also happen is the person you're talking to, they're not going to even know why, but they're going to really enjoy your company at that time. Yeah. They're going to they're going to open up more. And you can say things like, you know what? I might not see eye to eye on that, but I can see where you're coming from on that. That could have legs. You know what I mean? There could be some promise there. And that's when they're going to be like, whoa, did I just win? And they're probably going to think, oh, he's not trying to win. You know what I mean? And that's what's going to end up happening. Challenge yourself, find an opportunity and pull the trigger on that. Yeah. I think the important part of that might help is to really just try to understand that people are trying to be their best selves. Yeah. Right. And they're only offering their perspective. And that's what that is. And so if you're willing to ask those questions, the whys, why do you feel this way? Why do you think this way? What led you to this space to where this is your opinion? And then you actually digest that properly and allow your walls to come down. You could gain such a profound perspective on whatever it is you're talking about. Yeah. And make that, even the more important part is make that connection that you're talking about. And people will want to be around you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it's not a constant fight. It's understanding. It's being human. Yeah. So be more human. Be more human. There it is. Yeah. Be more human. There it is. It's discover more about yourself and your ability to connect with another human. It makes the connection so much more enjoyable and so much more enriching too. You just end up getting smarter, getting different perspectives. It opens up so very many doors when you just stop slamming yours shut. It just opens up so many. So give it a go. Yeah. That's what it is. That's what it is. I'd love to hear, I love when people listen to these podcasts and they come back and they say, I listened to the podcast. Here's what I've done differently since it, right? Especially when you issue your challenges. We love to hear those stories. So please, if this somehow impacted you in any way, feel free, leave it in the comments, leave wherever you can on the podcast platforms, do your thing. We want to hear from you guys and see if this resonated at all. But I really enjoyed this conversation. Because this was a conversation. I was going to try to find a fun way to start an argument with you at the very end of it, but I'm not going to. This was a little bit of a deeper podcast today, you know, a little, we got deep, but that's good. Sometimes we do that. That's good. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why we started this podcast. We felt like we had some perspective to offer. Yeah. And so hopefully it resonates. So I think we're done.
All right, man. I'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you later.